Greetings, fellow humans. My original intention of this video was to go over the evolution of For Honor from its first appearance at E3 all the way until the Marching Fire expansion. As you can tell, it's a little late for that. And I decided to quit. There's always that one game that gets under your skin every time you play it, but you can't stop because at one point it was fun and enjoyable. Well, to me, For Honor is definitely that game. And unfortunately, it ended up being nothing more than a test of how much bullshit I can take before I finally snap and end up in an asylum clawing marks on the wall of my theory-crafted situational decisions pertaining to every single matchup. The game is fundamentally broken and there is no way to fix it. So I decided that if this game is getting a video, it's definitely only getting one, because For Honor is not only a completely dead and worn out topic on YouTube, but it's also the biggest waste of potential since No Man's Sky, which was also shown at the same E3, making it the worst E3 I have ever seen, and it at least contributed to my ongoing newfound trust issues.
After all you've seen, after all the evidence, why can't you believe?
I'm afraid.
Seeing as how I have no intention of playing For Honor again, I will instead use what I've learned to warn potentially new players of the many flaws this game has, while simultaneously circle jerking all the veterans that might also feel jaded. I've wasted an exorbitant amount of time making sure I could flash these numbers in front of your face so it could validate my opinion. But at the end, none of it matters, because this game is such a colossal fuck up that the creator of the game left long before I even did. So I'm convinced that nobody genuinely cares about this game anymore. And if you do care, then I don't want to hear about it, because I've been where you are, and I hope you get better. But before all of the issues are presented in detail, it is absolutely necessary to point out what For Honor does right. First of which is how beautiful this game actually is, which shouldn't be a deciding factor on the quality of any game, but it is undeniable that looks matter, just like in real life. The level design is solid, with some maps managing to be both beautiful and balanced, especially after the reworks. And the lighting is absolutely stunning when the battle takes place during the day or the evening. On top of looking great, the game also has an excellent camera system that makes sure you have a clear view of the action, especially if you're pinned up against a wall, because instead of the camera jerking around trying to get a clear view, it instead phases through the wall, which is something every game should have. Also, the character design is great. Pretty much every character looks and feels exactly how they should, which makes for some fairly accurate, albeit stereotypical portrayals of actual combatants. And finally, yet most importantly, For Honor has an amazing tutorial. It includes both basic and advanced videos to help you learn a character. Unfortunately, that's where I have to stop complimenting this game, because if I try to any longer, I'll get stuck in the friend zone. Plus, I really want to start my long-winded complaints that will completely crumble the structure of this video, even though right now it's only held together with chewed pieces of gum and my steadily declining willpower to actually finish it. There's going to be lots of nitpicking, and it's winter, so you can bet your ass I got a big bag of salt with me too. One last thing, it is worth noting that I primarily played duels, so most of my complaints are directly to the 1 vs 1 mode, which isn't even how the game was marketed, but it's the most interesting and engaging way to play by a mile. Not to say that the other game modes are bad or anything, they're really fucking bad. But mainly I didn't play them due to the fact that when I first started playing this game, there was an absolutely massive advantage given to the people who bought the season pass for $90 instead of me who bought it for $60, leading to an extremely unfair matchup due to the fact that they had to add stat bonuses to all of the armor and weapons, while apparently also not having the slightest clue how to fucking balance a team. Thankfully, the item stat bonuses wasn't applied to duel mode, and I was able to play that freely, because that would have been a complete fucking disaster, seeing as how the way you get items is completely broken, which is through random loot after every match, but we'll get to this later. The problem I want to tackle first is matchmaking. It tells you the search is by location and reputation, which is like prestige in Call of Duty, but each character has its own reputation, and the search is by total reputation with every character, which is a wonderful idea on paper, but fails in practice practice because unless you are playing your main or secondary character, you're bound to get destroyed unless you have extensive knowledge of every move in the game, which isn't impossible. Some would argue that it's not even difficult. However, if For Honor made you pick your character before the queue and then search for a match based on just the fighter's reputation, there would be a much more even playing field. It's such a simple fix, and they refuse to do it. Nothing is worse than slowly being chipped down by someone playing their main while you're just trying to pretend Nobushi is still viable after her tournament patch. Oh, that needs context, my bad. For those of you who don't know, there was once a tournament where a guy won a whopping $2,000, they said it was 10, but he actually only won 2, because he was able to use a single exploit with Nobushi consistently, which stunned everyone, including the winner, and then right after, the creative director congratulates them. He says that they're going to have to change their playstyle, as if to say that the For Honor team is getting right to work to patch out all the bugs, which is ridiculous because it's not like they were unaware of these problems beforehand. The community has unrelentingly bitched about multiple exploits, and at one point, if you played an assassin, you couldn't even be knocked down. There are still major problems today that go completely unfixed, for no good reason, like how Centurion has a huge indicator bug where he can feint a guard break. This is absolutely unacceptable, seeing as how the Raider had the same problem several months ago. But to be all meta and self-aware, I'll say that I got off track and start talking about matchmaking again, because since the game is launched, there's been a huge problem with having to fight the same people, and this isn't because of the low player base, this is because the matchmaking system doesn't take into account people you've already played, so you might end up fighting the same person every time you queue for a match. And don't come to me with this bullshit how I don't know how things work, because if you get a match with the same person over and over again all night, the system is fucking broken, and it doesn't take a genius to figure that out. And while this matchmaking bug is great for salty runbacks for terrible matchups, or to get the last word in when it comes to some crazy shit talk, it is not intended to happen, yet it has been almost 2 years and it is still not fixed. That is pure incompetence. And just wait, because this part is hilarious. So at some point, people complained about rage quitters, right? Which isn't a huge deal aside from the fact that you had to fight a bot for the rest of the duel, which is still a huge problem. But at some point, the For Honor team decided to put in a patch that gave quitters a 10-minute ban from matchmaking, which made the problem so much worse. People would just start leaving simply out of spite. And by the way, if there was a fucking server room list, then I wouldn't even waste my breath bitching about matchmaking in the first place. But somebody, somewhere decided server room lists are bad, and I want to find this person, so I could tell them how they're ruining my life. Which is what some of the people who are playing try to do with their little walls of text in the chat. This game can reach Xbox Live levels of salt. And don't try to get all defensive, because I'm guilty of this as well. But to be fair, I don't think it's entirely our fault that we're toxic. The game makes it too easy to hate your opponent. The main reason is the vast amount of unwritten rules that cause immediate conflict if they aren't followed. Ring outs range from frowned upon to absolutely unacceptable, and there are still players that will just sit by a ledge waiting to throw you off. This was such a problem earlier in the game's life that they had to completely change multiple maps, which is the only reason why some maps are viable, because they actually made a valiant attempt to create less ring out opportunities, to which I say, just get rid of them altogether if you don't want them in the game. There are certain maps where most people have silently agreed to play in neutral areas, as to not accidentally win due to a stage hazard. Ring outs were so bad at one point that it led to this tired and worn out phrase, no honor, because, get it? The game is called For Honor, and it's like a little play on words. Yeah, it's so fucking hilarious and original. However, the mode with the most unwritten rules is Brawl, which is a 2 vs 2 battle for the 200,000 people who own this game, yet have only played it once, because they're smart. So in Brawl, not only are ring outs still frowned upon, but so is double teaming. In fact, even standing in the general vicinity of the other player's battle is a huge issue because of the auto-lock lock-on feature targeting the wrong person, which is a flawed feature to begin with because I have to hold L2 the entire time battling. Why can't you just toggle it to make sure it's on one person the whole time? And if you even think about attacking in your rage mode, then you are in for a wall of text in the chat. Oh, it's guaranteed. The rage mode is exclusively used as a bitch move to stop momentum. And even if you use it to do that, then you're still getting called out for acting like a pussy. Most of the time, I end up hating my opponent before I even get into the match. A good judge of character to see what kind of person you're playing is to look at their icon. Most of them resemble Pokeballs or other dumb shit like that, but if you decide to recreate terrible flags from a dark time in history or some type of racial slur, then that kind of paints a picture of what kind of person you choose to be, at least in this game. By the way, if you haven't noticed, my icon is a freshly used tampon, so I guess humor is kinda subjective. Oh, and on top of that, if anyone is still wearing golden armor, just murder them swiftly. There's no reason, 2 years into this game, to still be rocking all gold with yellow paint. You guys look like a bunch of shiny turds. Maybe that's an overreaction, but most importantly, it's a segue so I could talk about the item system in itself. Now, even though all of the weapons and armor in this game are incredibly detailed, that doesn't change the fact that it's a colossal pain in the ass to get them, because new items are only unlocked by leveling your character. After every 20 levels, you earn 1 reputation, and each reputation allows for different items at the end of your matches. If you are lucky, you will get 1 or 2 items each match, but most of the time, you'll either get something you already have, or nothing at all. And the best way to get new items is through loot boxes, which were handed out like candy, because Uplay can't stay up to save its fucking life, so you keep getting extra loot boxes and 3-day XP bonuses, because their launcher is incompetent, even though I bought it on Steam. I digress. Unfortunately, the loot boxes don't even allow you to have any item. They allow the items to the specific character at the specific reputation they are at. Each loot box gives you 5 items, and you only have 60 slots of inventory space. Why do you have inventory space? I have no idea. So when I decided to open 99 loot boxes that I've acquired over the years of playing, I had to keep going back and deleting the vast majority of weapons and armors I just unlocked to make room for the new ones. And I genuinely can't find a more grotesque and evil way to suck the fun out of opening free shit. Just talking about the things in this game it pisses me off to no extent. It's driving me up the fucking wall, and I haven't even started talking about the combat yet. I could sit here explaining every matchup in detail, but all you really have to know is that this game comes down to rock, paper, scissors, and coin flips, and no matter how complex or intricate your playstyle is, at the end of the day, the game is still rock, paper, scissors, and coin flips, which could be said about various other fighting games, but For Honor really makes you feel how it wants the combat to work. If you dodge within range, you will get grabbed. It doesn't matter what direction you dodge, because the grab has lock-on, and the game doesn't allow you to counter guard while caught in an animation. The window open for parries are absolutely massive, so the only safe attacks are either approaching with a guard break or a stun, although some would argue that you can't parry a 400 millisecond light, which is just one of the long list of reasons people will try to justify why they lost after a match, which is something I'm not personally going to get into, because that would involve me delving into the human psyche, and I'm much more interested in talking about For Honor's neutral game. Given the fact that basic attacks aren't safe and being anywhere near your opponent opens you up to get hit by a stun, most of the match is just you and your opponent both looking at each other, patiently waiting for a guaranteed opening, because someone was foolish enough to approach in a combat system where every move has a clear and direct counter, and you would think that this would make for a fair and intense cerebral experience, seeing as how 90% of the game is played in hypotheticals that you create in your head. But after a while, you start to notice that these aren't regular fighting game characters. These are more like MOBA characters. They were designed with 1 or 2 clear gimmicks in mind, and while this allows for each fighter to feel completely unique and true to their name, it severely limits how you can actually play them. The cast members' depth ranges from driveway one-way oil slick to freshly clogged sink. If you fight a warden, you know they are going to shoulder bash you. Yet it is most likely that you're going to get hit at least once because it's the warden's gimmick and it's what they do. The same goes for Raiders' zone attacks, Shinobi's kick, Orochi's dash attack stance, Valkyrie's charge and sweep, Shigoki's headbutt, Centurion's kick and punch, Lawbreaker's shove, Shaman's pounce, Conqueror's shield bash. You get what I'm saying here? All of these moves are what dictate how these characters play, whether it be from you trying to land them or making your opponent afraid of them, because having any type of crowd control is extremely overpowered in this game. Once I took the time to learn every character in and out, there was an overwhelming sensation of anger after every loss. There's no reason for me to keep getting hit by the same thing over and over again, yet it keeps happening. And the reason for this is that some gimmicks are just stronger than others. When Shinobi's kick was first introduced, it was the best move in the game by a mile. It came out too fast and the tracking was too good. This was patched out to make it less of an overwhelming force and more of just a solid neutral option with hard counters. Unfortunately, these moves can't always be fixed without the character losing its identity. The worst gimmick move in the game as of making this video is Neox's trap. Sorry, my bad. Hook Sword Bitch's trap, which looks more like a game-breaking glitch than it does an actual move. A trap is a move that is a normal swing on startup, but then switches to a little icon sort of acting like a feint. But if you defend against it, yes, if you try to defend against the attack, then it will activate, causing a horrific turn of events for someone who gets caught in it. So in this game, where the only safe option is defending and running away, the developers thought it would be a good idea to create a move that punishes you for defending. So what are you supposed to do? Roll around the whole match? It's like these people working on this medieval combat game don't want people to actually fight each other at all. There's just so long before patience wears thin and someone has to attack. And most of the time, the first person to attack is the first person actually getting hit. A vast majority of this game is walking in circles around your opponent. And if you give one character a ridiculous mechanic that forces the opponent to be even more scared to approach, is this a fucking joke? Do they not understand how this game is played at all? Or are they desperately fighting for people to completely abandon all strategy and just take turns beating each other over the head with their weapon? Every time new characters are introduced, they're in a pack of 4. And every time, there has been at least one of them that is a god among men. But the Marching Fire pack is completely busted. Zhang Zun has a fucking kick that goes way further than it should. Tiandi can dodge anything he wants and has a dash attack that reaches half a mile. The Shaolin has a sidestep attack that makes him invincible. And Hook Bitch completely breaks the game. No wonder so many dedicated players just left, including myself. I stuck with this game for 2 years, and every time I played it, the more upset I was. I have broken not 1, but 2 controllers because of For Honor, and at one point seriously considered if I had to seek therapy for my anger issues playing this game. It actually took a toll on my mental health, and that is not exaggerating, nor am I proud to admit it. And the worst part, the absolute worst part, is that this game has an incredibly low skill ceiling, because it's not enough to just be good. And more often than not, it's not the player who's more skilled who wins, it's the player who has the most patience. Even when it looks like there's a lot of moves being thrown out, and various buttons being pressed, and lots of stuff going on, in all honesty, it's a fucking facade. The vast majority of attacks you make in a match are never meant to connect in the first place. A loss never feels warranted, and after a while, neither does a victory. The end-all, be-all meta strategy in this game is to do absolutely nothing until your opponent does something first. This was always the intention, and they have made that very clear. If you are not standing there, either ready to dodge, parry, or roll at a moment's notice, then you aren't playing to win. You're playing to try to have fun. Any risk you take puts you at a brutally unfair disadvantage compared to to how little they are actually rewarded. You don't win because you outsmarted your opponent. You win because this game revolves around 50-50s and your opponent guessed wrong. The reputation isn't a leveling system. It's a treadmill to run on, and they hold different items locked behind a higher reputation that acts as a metaphorical donut to chase. The faction war isn't a real war, and territories don't actually matter. It's a popularity contest to see which group is playing the most. It's a whole 2 years into this game's life, and there still isn't a proper ranking system. And now they're using For Honor as a promotional tool for Assassin's Creed. Is that really necessary? Is it? Did you really have to bring another old and tired series that disappoints on a consistent basis to this game that has disappointed me on every level? Or are you extremely self-aware and this is some sort of attempt at humor on your part? Did you guys not make enough money from Siege? There's like 100,000 people playing at this very moment. Are you guys short on cash? Did somebody take your lunch money? I calmed down a little. I had to take a break. There was a very real possibility of For Honor being a masterpiece, but instead, you dropped the ball in every aspect. The menus, the UI, everything not surrounding the gameplay is complete trash. You started out with this realistic, gritty art style, and now there's dragon heads and anime letters, and it went completely out of control. Not only that, but there was pay to win in your $60 game, and I don't give a fuck that you gave For Honor away for free, because $60 still left my pocket, yet I cannot play arcade mode unless I spend even more money. Shame on you. The characters are horribly unbalanced with no way to fix them because the core gameplay is fundamentally flawed and only works on paper due to the introduction of completely unfair mechanics. Shame on you. You have completely lost touch with your small yet extremely devoted fan base that gives you an endless supply of practical ideas which for the most part go completely ignored. These people give you way more credit and time and effort than you have ever deserved. Shame on the creator for jumping ship and getting out of here as fast as fucking possible. Shame on Ubisoft for making me download Uplay, which goes down more than a porn star. And most of all, shame on me for wasting so much time holding on to hope because of this fantasy world I created where this game was actually worth playing. Feel free to subscribe if you enjoyed my descent into madness. Join the Daily Quest Discord if you need a shoulder to cry on for how much this game hurt you. There's a link in the description. And most importantly, I cannot stress this enough, try to have a nice day. Peace out.